By mi ruat but bo cho chet trong vung bun but gia. Emotis and lindoi thop bat ngio duak. Ko mai giant nuoi. Ton bao not rung gia om veo long. In hung su that ron nuoi not li nam o 21 gay sao. Dap nat moi din lit tien hoa. Tao hoa chua bao geo la mot nu jimi hien tu. Tu thuo so kai. No to sam by mot ku han quiet mal lan. Ven han the gioi nai bang mot ban on tu in mang. Tin chan lok tu ni. Trong sai dao trong hong da ton kok I. Lut choi chi ko mot. Kuman nut tron tat ca. Kiyunam suang lam bi fong cho kakok sin ton. Bangkok lok. Ban van xian su fuang zot. Boich thoi. Tunin kong ko cho cho and hung giant nuok. Mat he su yu doi. And hung. Chian gise zara kai Thursday. Lut luton nan va bat d bat dike. I bong lean by Indian nat boi. Shin mot trong and hung sin. Bat bao chua not qua rongjia. Bong Gwen Chan 03 min. Chow Kui 6 Vakak Ban. Chow Mung on M de Buk Veo Mot Goknan Hon Ton Kok Beat. Noi Chung Tai Se Kung Moxe Mot. Su Kin Chan Dong Din Muc Lam. Ren Nut Muan Nun Tang Qua. Sach Jiao Qua Sin Tai Han. Koi Ong Wan Tu Vung Moi Toi Tam Va But Jia Qua Rung Jia Virunga. Mot Ku Lat Mat Qua Tau Hoa De Dien Ra. Vaku Vung Don Dap. Nat Moi Kui Lut I Lai La Mot Con Kai Dat Lung Back. Kong Lo Mang Trin Min Chong Chit, and Hung Vetus Yo Chien Tran. De Kong Phi La Dam Ba Ka Chien Ko Tich Duok The Det De Lam, and Long, and Hung Nuo Yu Dong Vat Trin Mang Exe Hoi. De La Motca Tuk Gia Di Beat. Mot Tuong Keen Tone Bo Gioi, Qua Hok Phi Sung So Nino. He Tuong Ve Motca, Sin Doi Jua Chan Bo Sao. Theo by Tone Sin Tun Ko Ban No. Moti do a trace and non ot chik chan fine and tam ve2 and in wong tone bo on wan song cho do a con ko man kaimi byuk fi tu choi chin kook ruat kwa min ton min and hung do la catch de way not de way try noi jong the in hung nai tai ran gioi kwa su song bot side check 6 Thursday lin lung back kuma sin hot hui din chi mang su min de way not la bao lu bao ve lando va kai try bang on dam. The Bukare Honda complete veil, Saichet Duok Lap Trin, Sen Kwa Tu Min Bang, Mot Han Dong Chua Tong Kotin, Lutrong Supon Thap, KY Lich Su Kwan Sakaida. Va Thursday King Nuoi Taran Talk Gai Han Ca, La Dung Ba Kwan Sao. Han Dong 6 Dive off I Lyi Lai Duok Tai Hien Mot Lon Nua Bone. Chin Sin Lin Be No Tho Kwa Tu. Tau Ra Mot Vong Lap, KY Ju Kwa Su Dao Kim. Su that Nai Jong Mot Don Chi Mang Veo Team, Tu, Kwa Chung Ta. Kwa Chua Bao Gio Nin, Nan and Hung Kon Bat Hong Dai Nu and Hung Komai Veo Han Chi Beat, Che Bang Ban Nong Gok. Quatrin Lon Lon Boy Hong Non So Lu Tu, Get a Day Twa Mot View. Sao Tam Ben Trong Lop Veo Voc Hong Da. Chung So Hu Mot The Gioi Noi Tong, Va, Try Tuesday Cam Suk Fuk Tap. Sao Sac Dan Muc, Du Suc Lam, Be Mat Bat, KY Chi and Gia, Now Dam Buong Loi Koi Thorn. Tu Nin Vo 10, Du La Su That. In Hung Doi Kai, Nai Trin Bo Vuk Tam Qua Su Tuet Vong. Lone Track and Lai Troy Day Nu Mot 13, Kai Sin Tun, Toi, Wong Va 6 Dai 9. Truak Kai Twalat Mo Kwan Ho So Tuet Mat Va Day Gai Gok Nai De Duan M Chin Sao Veo Nian Dong Troy Qua Rung Virunga. Hey Nim Cho Twa Mot Nut Tip. Nin Nut Dang K1. Kim Vada Lai Ben Wan Cho Twa Beep on M Dang Zem Video 9 Tuda. Suong Hova Tuong Ta Kwan M Chin La Thursday Nin Lu Song Con Jup Thuit Tone Bung Sang. Teep Them Cho Ken Mot Dong Luke Vo Bo Ben to Teep Tuc Han Trin Boc Tran in Hung Su That Ton Kok in Hung Kung Day Mami Kwa the Gioi Hong Da. GOT. Hey Hit Mot Hoi That Sao. Chung Ta Bat Dao Thoi. As the dense, suffocating mist settles over the jagged peaks of the Virunga Mountains, the stage is set for a biological tragedy as old as time itself. To understand the sheer magnitude of what transpired,
a fragile infant gorilla
in the
resting.
brutal reality of this environment. Virunga is not a sanctuary of peace. It is a freezing, unforgiving fortress of altitude and rain, where every calorie burned must be justified by survival. In this grueling theater, a female mountain gorilla went into labor, a vulnerable state that puts the entire troop on high alert. But nature, in its infinite and often cruel irony, dealt her a hand that primate biology simply cannot afford to play. She delivered twins. For humans, this is a moment of double joy, celebrated and supported by modern medicine and societal safety nets. For a wild mountain gorilla, it is an absolute nightmare. The mathematics of survival in the rainforest dictate that a mother barely has enough caloric intake and physical energy to carry, nurse, and protect one infant through the perilous first years of life. 2 infants mean a divided resource pool, drastically dropping the survival probability of both to near zero. Faced with this impossible equation, the mother's hardwired instincts took over, overriding any maternal sentimentality. I have spent years staring at behavioral data, reading the cold, clinical descriptions of these events, but visualizing it happening in the damp shadows of the undergrowth makes your stomach turn. One infant was robust, vocal, and clung to her fur with the desperate strength of the living. The other, born premature, was devastatingly small, its cries barely a whisper against the howling mountain wind. It was a runt, a fragile anomaly that the merciless ledger of natural selection had already crossed out. The mother made the only choice evolution allowed her. She secured the strong infant to her chest and deliberately abandoned the weak one. She did not look back. She could not afford to. The tiny, hairless creature was left behind on the wet, freezing forest floor, a shivering mass of doomed biology waiting for the inevitable end. The temperature in Virunga drops precipitously as the sun dips below the canopy, and for a newborn primate lacking thermoregulation, the cold is a swift and silent executioner. Watching from a behavioral perspective, the script was written, the outcome sealed. Predators, exposure, or simple starvation would claim the infant within hours. The rest of the troop moved on, their social dynamics ignoring the discarded life just as they ignore falling leaves. It is a harsh truth that forces you to swallow the bitter pill of reality. Wild animals are pragmatists first and foremost. There is
The
no
bond
mourning for
between a
what could have been.
silverback and a
Only
tiny
the
infant,
relentless drive
built
to
in the
protect
midst
what
of
is
a
viable.
cold,
The tiny
unforgiving
creature's
jungle.
breaths became shallow, its microscopic fingers grasping blindly at the empty air, finding nothing but cold mud and decaying leaves. The heartbeat, once a rapid drumfire of new life, began to slow, surrendering to the overwhelming apathy of the wild. This was supposed to be the end of a very short, very tragic chapter, a mere footnote in the ecological data of the region. Yet, just as the chilling grip of the mountain air prepared to claim its tiny victim, a colossal shadow eclipsed the dying light, completely rewriting the rules of everything we thought we knew. Enter the silverback. He was the undisputed monarch of this troop, a 400-pound juggernaut of muscle, dominance, and suppressed violence. His broad back was heavily streaked with the silver hair of maturity, and his flesh bore the jagged, permanent scars of territorial wars and lethal disputes. By every metric written in the textbooks of primatology, this creature is a biological weapon, programmed to defend his harem, crush rival males, and rule through absolute intimidation. When it comes to the rearing of infants, the alpha male's role is almost entirely perimeter defense. In fact, in many primate societies, a dominant male might even commit infanticide to bring females back into estrus if the offspring isn't his. At best, they are indifferent to the young. At worst, they are a lethal threat. So, when this massive warlord broke away from the marching troop and slowly lumbered back toward the abandoned, dying infant, the natural assumption was that he was returning to finish the job. I can only imagine the breath-catching tension of the observers who first documented this anomaly. The silverback loomed over the shivering, premature baby, his fists, the size of cinder blocks, resting on the mud. One strike, even a careless step, would obliterate the fragile life in an instant. But then, the universe blinked. The giant did not roar. He did not crush. Instead, with a gentleness that defies every logical explanation, he reached out with thick, scarred fingers and delicately scooped the dying infant from the frozen earth. The contrast was staggering, the ultimate embodiment of wilderness brutality, cradling the ultimate symbol of vulnerability. He did not just inspect the baby out of morbid curiosity. He brought the tiny, freezing body up to his massive chest, burying it deep within his thick fur to transfer his own body heat. He sat down in the mud, turning his back to the biting wind, creating a living, breathing fortress of flesh and muscle around the doomed bride. This was an act of profound rebellion. This silverback was not the father, nor was he biologically equipped to nurse. He was actively defying the mother's evolutionary choice, disrupting the natural order of the troop, and taking on a burden that offered absolutely zero reproductive advantage. He became a surrogate, a protector, an anchor of life for a creature the forest had already thrown away. For days, he carried the infant. He altered his foraging patterns, moving slower, sitting longer, allowing the tiny creature to draw warmth and find whatever meager sustenance it could from the chewed pith of plants he offered. The troop, confused by this bizarre shift in their leader's behavior, had no choice but to slow their pace and adapt to the silverback's new, self-imposed mission. I have read countless papers on animal altruism, mostly explained away by kin selection or reciprocal benefits. But this was pure, unadulterated empathy. It was a conscious choice to shield the weak, an emotional override of a biological imperative. The alpha male had transformed from a tyrant into a savior, and in doing so, he kept the fading spark of life. Premature baby alive against insurmountable odds. That singular act of rebellion against nature's cruelty would have been enough to secure this silverback's place in scientific history. But the forest had one more miracle waiting in the wings, a staggering echo of compassion that would unfold exactly 3 weeks later. The infant, against all mathematical probabilities, had survived. It was still heartbreakingly small, frail, and entirely dependent, but it clung to the silver hair of its giant guardian with a tenacious will to live. The bond between the two had solidified into an impenetrable dynamic, a silent understanding between the scarred warrior and the broken child. But the wild is incredibly unforgiving of peace. Just as the infant was stabilizing, disaster struck from a different angle. A brutal, unforeseen territorial clash with a rogue, solitary male left our reigning silverback severely wounded. The interloper was driven off, but the cost was astronomical. The alpha had sustained deep, jagged lacerations across his shoulder and thigh, wounds that quickly became infected in the humid, bacteria-rich environment of the jungle. The mighty king fell. The infection triggered a raging fever, completely incapacitating the 400-pound giant. He collapsed into a nest of crushed ferns, his breathing ragged, his massive chest heaving with the effort of fighting off the unseen microbial enemy. The dynamic of the troop immediately fractured. Panic and unease rippled through the females and younger males. Without their invincible leader, they were exposed, vulnerable to predators and rival groups. Instinct told them to distance themselves from the sick, to preserve their own health and prepare for a potential change in leadership. They formed a wide, nervous perimeter, leaving the fallen king isolated in his agony. It is a harsh reality of pack dynamics. When the strong fall, they are often left behind to face the dark alone. But there was one exception. The premature baby, the tiny creature whose life was forfeit just 21 days prior, did not retreat. While the healthy, robust members of the troop backed away, this frail infant began a slow, determined crawl toward the massive, feverish body of the silverback. What happened next is a sequence of events that permanently altered my perception of animal consciousness. The baby, barely able to coordinate its own limbs, climbed onto the giant's heaving chest. It did not whine for food or demand attention. Instead, it began to mimic the exact behaviors of comfort and protection it had received. The infant reached out with its tiny, delicate fingers and began to meticulously groom the matted, blood-stained fur around the silverback's wounds. It pressed its remarkably small body directly against the giant's neck, offering the only thing it had to give, its own meager body heat and physical presence. When the silverback groaned in pain, the infant would softly vocalize a low, comforting rumble that echoed the very sounds the alpha had used to soothe it weeks before. It even gathered small, wet leaves, clumsily placing them near the giant's face, a heartbreakingly pure attempt to offer hydration or sustenance. This was not instinct. This was not a hardwired biological response to a stimulus. This was gratitude. It was a deliberate, conscious act of reciprocity. The baby, having stared death in the face and been pulled back by this titan, was now throwing its tiny, insignificant shield over the fallen king. It was a perfect, closed loop of empathy, proving that the emotional capacity to pay it forward is not a uniquely human trait, but a universal frequency of life that these magnificent creatures are fully capable of tuning into. Watching the data of that frail infant pressing its tiny hand against the battle-scarred chest of its savior, the last remnants of my scientific detachment crumbled into dust. We, as humans, have long suffered from a terminal case of arrogance. We have built towering philosophical monuments to our own morality, convinced that we hold the absolute monopoly on empathy, compassion, and the capacity for complex love. We write textbooks that reduce the majestic beasts of the wild to biological algorithms, complex machines driven solely by the pursuit of calories and the desperate urge to pass on genetic material. But the chilling, beautiful truth rising from the mists of Virunga completely obliterates that anthropocentric worldview. When a creature programmed for violence chooses mercy, and when a creature programmed for nothing but self-preservation chooses to comfort its dying protector, they bridge the colossal gap between human and animal. They prove that the soul of the wild is not just dark and full of terrors. It is also capable of a blinding, profound grace. This event forces us to ask terrifyingly beautiful questions about the nature of consciousness itself. If a gorilla can feel gratitude, if it can weigh the value of a life against the dictates of instinct and choose compassion, then what else are they feeling while we blindly destroy their habitats? The tragedy of the wild is no longer just about the loss of biodiversity. It is about the destruction of sentient, emotional worlds that we are only just beginning to comprehend. The silverback eventually recovered, his immense constitution fighting off the infection, undoubtedly anchored to the living world by the relentless devotion of the tiny life he had saved. They survived together, an anomaly that continues to walk the forests, a living, breathing defiance of the rules of nature. This story from the dark heart of the jungle isn't just a feel-good anecdote. It is a mirror held up to our own humanity. It strips away our excuses and challenges us to look at the natural world not as a resource to be managed, or a brutal arena to be feared, but as a vast, ancient network of emotional intelligence that demands our deepest respect. I started this journey analyzing data, but I am ending it humbled by the sheer emotional gravity of creatures we barely understand. Thank you for walking through this incredible journey with me. If this story shifted your perspective, if it made you feel the profound connection that binds all living things, hit that like button. Share this video to spread the truth of the wild, and make sure you are subscribed so you never miss a dive into these incredible untold stories. This is Vong Nguyen Chen 03, signing off. Stay curious, stay compassionate, and I will see you in the next investigation. The story of the Virunga silverback and the abandoned twin infant fundamentally disrupts our understanding of the natural world. In an unforgiving environment where biological algorithms dictate a cold, pragmatic calculus for survival, a fragile life was discarded out of pure necessity. Yet, this tragedy set the stage for an extraordinary rebellion against evolutionary law. The troop's apex predator, a creature biologically engineered for dominance, territorial warfare, and violence, chose to become a gentle surrogate protector, offering life-saving warmth to a doomed runt without any reproductive incentive. This raw display of unadulterated empathy was miraculously mirrored weeks later when the giant fell gravely ill from infected battle wounds. Instead of fleeing to safety as pack instinct demands, the vulnerable infant stayed by its savior's heaving chest, attempting to groom, comfort, and protect the massive warlord in a closed loop of profound gratitude. By witnessing an alpha male trade his evolutionary mandate for mercy, and a fragile infant repay that debt with absolute devotion, we are forced to reevaluate our relationship with the animal kingdom. Together, they shattered the anthropocentric myth that complex morality, altruism, and compassion are exclusively human traits. We must acknowledge that the destruction of wild habitats is not just an ecological loss, but the erasure of vibrant, sentient emotional worlds. This remarkable tale from the misty peaks of Virunga leaves an indelible mark on our conscience, proving that the capacity to care for the vulnerable is a universal frequency, and that love can thrive in the most merciless environments. True strength is not measured by dominance, physical power, or the ability to conquer, but by the capacity to show mercy and protect those who can offer nothing in return. Furthermore, compassion is never truly wasted. It creates a reciprocal ripple effect that can ultimately save the very person who initiated it. In our fast-paced, highly competitive modern society, it is easy to fall into a survival of the fittest mentality, where we prioritize our own advancement and ignore those who are struggling. You can apply the Silverback's lesson by actively choosing empathy over indifference. Step outside your daily routine to offer a shield to someone vulnerable, whether that means mentoring a struggling colleague, supporting a friend going through a silent battle, or advocating for the marginalized in your community. Similarly, when you are the one who receives grace, remember the infant gorilla. Reciprocate with whatever resources you have, even if it is just your presence and gratitude. Acknowledge that the emotional connections we build and the altruism we show are the ultimate safety nets in our lives. Have you ever personally witnessed an animal display an undeniable act of compassion, gratitude, or empathy? Please share your story or perspective in the comments below. Reading your experiences helps us all broaden our understanding of the incredible world around us. If this story moved you or shifted your perspective, please subscribe to the channel. Your support gives us the vital motivation we need to keep investigating and bringing you more of these profound, untold stories.